A brief message from your friendly neighborhood editing Jordan. This is your content warning. We try to keep things PG-13 around here, however, certain among us have a proclivity towards foul language and foul humor, so viewer discretion is advised. This is your only warning. While we're at it, I should probably note that any opinions stated about a certain tabletop role-playing game are just that, our opinions. We have been longtime fans and players of the game, and so we have a vested interest in how game mechanics work, and as a hobby in our group, we enjoy yelling at each other over rules interpretations. So everything that we say is all in good fun. With that in mind, however, I will still ask, wizards, please hire us. Well, with that out of the way, enjoy the show.
Looks like I need my own magic. Although I don't think there's any magic that could fix what just happened there for me.
Maybe there is. We don't know.
I feel like I got the closest thing that there is for that, and it's called glasses.
A modern day marvel.
Hey, you don't need those anymore. Just spend copious amounts of money and they can fix your eye with lasers.
Doesn't that sometimes not work, though?
I don't know.
I think so, but I think the failure rate is not as high as it used to be.
That's still not comforting.
As with
It
all
used
things,
to
it gets better
be
over time.
90% fail rate. Now it's 89% fail rate. No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
See, if I'm gonna let them stick lasers in my eyes, I need like a more than that guarantee that it's not gonna make things worse, because the bar is already really low.
Well, what if instead of cool science lasers, someone did it with weird magic lasers? Would you then have a different opinion?
I would still need like a higher percentile guarantee.
What if theirs is just like a 50-50 coin flip?
No, I'm not playing with those odds, especially if it's TJ asking if he can do it.
They have to roll.
They have to roll.
They might miss.
If we're doing the odds coin, absolutely not.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Nat One Podcast, aka Nope, because nope, you're not gonna want to hear what we're about to have to say. I'm Pertuset.
I'm Levi.
And I'm Jordan.
Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, we're talking about magic.
Yeah.
D&D magic. But what if it was real and we had it and only us three, no one else, no, everyone, actually.
Yes. What if society, our human, normal, real-life society, had magic ever? Well, there are two different ways to look at it, but firstly, if we always had it, ever since mankind walked on two legs, we had it. And for the sake of argument, I think it's funnier because obviously that would drastically and dramatically change the events of history and how they unfolded to the point where modern day would not even be recognizable.
Probably not. Yeah, no.
So I think for the sake of this argument, pretend that more like it's like we got to take moments of history and imagine what if they had magic. Moments of real life history. Like it's Assassin's Creed.
Somehow no, actually, what if it's just like because everyone now has magic, it all cancels out so that everything happens roughly exactly the same as it did, but now just with like a magic tint to it.
Yeah, true.
Urban fantasy.
I was talking to one of my coworkers about this idea because I was bored, and I was like, you probably don't want to underestimate just how stupid people can be with these powers.
Yeah.
Not that they would do something like bad with them necessarily, but that they would misuse it, not in a bad way, but they would misuse it so much that whatever they were trying to do became ineffective.
Considering how many fail videos we watch just in our free time for fun, I feel like that would be a whole other compilation subset.
True.
He forgot to put the magic parking brake on.
Not the parking brake.
He forgot to use magic lock on his car so that it stayed in place.
True.
Oh,
gosh, breaking into cars would be a lot funnier because you'd have to cast knock.
Would it be funnier or would it be easier?
Well, easier definitely, but also it would have that giant sound effect that's like someone broke into your car.
And I'm also assuming that the noise would set off other surrounding car alarms.
Probably.
So then you'd have that issue as well.
Me
All right.
having to cast Glyph of Warding on my car seat so that people don't steal it. Can't have shit in Detroit.
Um, One thing I think is important to note that I think would also be true is with the existence of magic, I think technological progress would have been slowed down dramatically
Yeah, that's something
because
I
there's
was
no
gonna
need
bring
for
up.
it.
Yeah, is that's literally the line I've taken in my homebrew setting is technology's there and like people have guns and early modern technology kind of exists to a point, but people just don't use it as much because they're like, well, why? I can
hmm
either buy a cannon and do all the maintenance that's required with that every time and get all the cannonball, and that costs so much money, or I can hire a wizard for like half the cost and just have them use fireball 4 times for the same amount of damage.
Yeah.
Like,
And not to dumb it down, but like that makes all warfare, I think, I would think most, if not all warfare from like the beginning of time to like the 1500s pretty much end up being about the same.
yeah.
I mean, of course, it would have to
Mhm.
adapt with like strategic minds, but for the most part, it'd be the same, right? It'd be like who has the bigger wizard.
Well, it is a question at that
I think
point
that's
of
when you start
like,
getting into like X-Men territory.
well,
Mm.
how readily available is magic? Because is it like standard fantasy setting where it's actually kind of limited and only certain people have it, or is
It's,
it like everyone has access to magic?
I figured it would have to be exactly like D&D 5e rules. So warlocks probably don't exist in this setting. Um,
Sorcerers would probably be a big one.
Sorcerers could exist. Wizards could exist, but it would require the years and years of study and
Yep.
practice.
Yeah.
Clerics, I'm not sure. Paladins could because theirs comes from oaths necessarily.
I think that's depending if we actually put a pantheon in this scenario.
It's
Because
not.
if we're
It's our
talking
real
magic, no
world.
pantheon. I know. I feel like, because we've also seen the precedent, at least in our games, of clerics who are clerics just because they so strongly believe that they are clerics. We also see that with Jester Lavore in Critical Role. So is it like, how are we defining a cleric in this instance? I feel like there may be the possibility for them to exist in a more limited capacity.
A cleric would have to be somebody that spends a lot of their time following a religious order.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's just your interpretation of does the cleric actually get their powers from their god or do they get it from just having such a strong conviction in their faith? Because obviously I don't think we want to apply
Mm.
one singular faith as being correct in
I
the
was gonna
real
say,
world scenario.
it would
So
be so
That's what I'm saying
funny.
is like mechanically, how are you working this? Are they more similar to paladins or
Mm.
are they
I don't think they should be.
non-existent?
Because we know that paladins' powers come from their oath, and to say that clerics therefore must also get it from their belief, I think
mm,
is kind of a cop out.
mm,
Mhm.
Because theirs doesn't. Theirs comes from their faith. Like it comes from their actual worship, religiosity, and deity powers.
mm.
Now, I think it would be really funny if in the events of cleric history, everybody was like eventually one religion started having clerics, and it's like, oh, that's the real one. That's the right
That's
one.
the real one, guys. It's working.
We
It's
found it, guys.
But for the sake of argument, I'm going to say that won't happen. They don't even know what clerics are. That's never a thing.
Mm,
Or you could choose to do the route of it's because of their belief, but I think let's not since paladins can also exist.
yeah. So what about druids and rangers?
I suppose they would since that's mostly just related to nature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
I
like the
think that
connection to the
that's
world.
reasonable.
I didn't even think about druids.
Well, and I
Oh
mean, we
my
already do
God, the
have.
70s would have had so many druids.
Yeah, a bunch of the mushroom druids.
I was gonna say we do have already a historical precedent of like homeopathic medicine and natural approaches to life and everything like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's very much in line with you could definitely tap into something
Mm.
in the wild.
Now, I think that about sums it up as far as what magic could exist. Like it would follow the rules of the classes.
Mm-hmm.
Artificers.
So that's true too.
Those are just scientists. Those are just...
It would take a while for them to really start getting it.
Yeah.
I would say we would get our first artificer during the Enlightenment.
Yeah,
Maybe
probably.
the Renaissance. Maybe the Renaissance. That would be really funny though.
Now the real question: blood hunters.
Not real.
They don't. I would say
It'd
that
have
like blood hunters
horrifying
as a thing might
implications.
exist, but they don't actually have magic. They're just like crazy people.
True.
Understandable.
It's just like an armchair wizard who
Yeah.
walks out one day and goes like, "We are born by the blood, made men by the blood, and whatever the third thing is by the blood."
And then the wizards in their universities are like, no, those guys are just conspiracy theorists.
Like,
Actually,
what's
don't
wrong
worry
with
about
you?
them. They're crazy.
Giving us a bad rep.
Yeah.
So, with that groundwork laid, um, like I said, battles would pretty much be the same. But the one thing I'm very interested in, and maybe I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, is like the 20th century warfare. Because like
Yeah.
with technology development slowing down like crazy because there's magic, how do we get nuclear warfare?
Since I
How do we get to the
offhandedly
Cold
mentioned
War?
X-Men earlier, I feel like that's kind of the precedent that we have to follow. Like
Yeah.
the alternate timeline in the Marvel universe where there are people with extraordinary abilities. I feel like it's kind of like that principle where you would have, assuming that not everybody has magic and you do have to work to some degree to unlock and use efficiently.
Mm.
I feel like we would kind of follow the same line of logic as mutants in the X-Men universe during those times of crisis.
Yeah, at that point, we're going on a divergent path of is magic socially accepted or isn't it? Because if
Mhm.
it's not, we're going down X-Men path where everyone's like, okay, just get rid of them. We
Mm.
don't want them here anymore. They're causing problems. And that's where like our timeline is trying to become the one that's real, right? Where there's
Mm.
no magic anymore. Or is it we incorporate magic into our daily life, which then we're getting like into Saga of Tanya the Evil territory,
Mm.
where the military has mages that dogfight with planes on their own as a flying individual.
Like
True.
Howl's Moving Castle.
So,
Well, again, if we assume in this scenario it's been around since the dawn of time, there probably were times in history where uh, societies straight up said no magic.
mm,
And I
mm,
imagine what happened to them is they got blown up by magic.
probably.
Mhm.
Either from the citizens they tried to dismiss, or from other societies that had capable magicians
Mm.
to bomb them with fireball. um,
I think Genghis Khan would have been a sorcerer king.
you think so?
Yeah,
No, I can see that actually.
yeah.
I don't know if he'd be a sorcerer necessarily, king, but he would definitely have some magics to him. I almost think he would be like an Eldritch Knight.
An Eldritch Knight.
I almost think so, yeah. Name's not necessarily fitting. We've talked about that before,
No,
though.
no,
It's like,
yeah,
why
no.
is the fighter Eldritch? But anyway.
Where do we end up on that with the classes that are not magic but have magical subsets?
I think those are just real life already.
Yeah, honestly, they can be. Yeah, the fighter can be attributed pretty easily to most real life combat styles, I
Mhm.
think.
Even the monk, whether the name is fitting or not, is just an especially agile attacker.
Yep.
Mm.
And then you can just apply magic to them. These ones do a
Rogue,
little bit more magic than the other ones do.
I guess you would focus more on the skill monkey aspect of the rogue. I forgot about the bard, but it would be in the same rules as the wizard. You got to go to college.
And I would still hate them in this timeline too.
That's
Bards are
darn
just
right.
theater kids.
Yeah.
It's just the college theater department.
They are way worse than that. They are theater kids given access to ninth level magic.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the college theater department.
that's the magic that we're banning. We don't care about any of the rest of it. We're
No
just
bards.
making sure those singers don't get to do shit with it.
That probably would reach the point of like you need magic certification. Like it would be
Yeah.
regulated almost like
Licensure,
firearms.
yeah.
Yeah. It would be
In
like
this timeline in the United States Constitution, is there a right to bear magic? Is there?
I feel like there would have to be, don't you?
I mean, it really would. In this scenario, it is kind of replacing like firearms technology.
Yeah,
So
you would have to have some kind of legislation and language around it as to like what is like you'd have to redefine what a war crime is.
Mm. There would be some spells that are just like you can't use that, like sickening
Yeah.
radiance or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
definitely
there are
not.
some that are just like
Mhm.
completely off the table, not taught, not okay, definitely a bioweapon.
Yep.
meteor swarm. You can.
Enchantment magic becomes a lot creepier.
Hmm.
That's one I think a lot of people have considered before because it's like, yeah, what if I
Because of the
just use
implications.
Gesh on my crush and
Yeah.
make her my mind slave for a month?
Yeah, no, that's pretty horrible. That's
Yeah.
so yeah, no, okay, now you're both convincing me that we definitely would be going down the timeline of like heavy regulation. We don't trust mages.
It
We
would
don't
be it would be a wizardocracy. It would be
we
we
don't
go to
want them.
school for a really long time and study it. We decide what you do and don't use.
Yep.
And the bards would be like, "Why don't we get a say? We go to school for 4 years." And the wizard's like, "Shut up." But
Oh.
yeah, I think that's about how that would go.
Yeah.
But I
So
still
what
don't
would
think you
oh
can't match the destructive output of a nuclear device
oh
with
no.
even meteor swarm.
No.
No,
I mean
there.
that
Yeah.
takes us to the question of though, like because in older editions of D&D, ninth level wasn't the end all be all. You could go beyond that. It's just they for gameplay reasons, they capped it at ninth level in fifth edition, and then they gave a lore reason as to why it was capped, which was the gods said, you mortals did too much bad with your bigger than ninth level spells, so now we're only gonna let you do up to ninth. So that is the question: is in this scenario, are we going beyond ninth level, or is it just capping at ninth level?
It's fifth edition rules for this thought experiment, so only ninth level.
Then
Dang it,
that
no
does
prestige
mean there
classing.
is an
Mm.
eventual limit to what magic can do. That science can definitely go beyond. So
But if you
I
just
think,
cast wish, can you just wish for like a bunch of nukes?
well,
Well,
that's
but,
left up
but
to
you wouldn't
DM
know what they are,
interpretation.
right?
That it's also left up to DM interpretation because, like, the entire spell, the spell of wish does have actual set
I
parameters for
know.
what it can do, which is anything eighth level and lower. It can definitely 100% do that. But if you go higher than that, then it's like, okay, the DM has to interpret how this happens.
And this is
Yeah.
how we flip back around to is God real? Because
Yeah.
how is that decided?
I think it would be as simple as like the person tries it and it's like, oh, it didn't work.
Yep.
So
Now
it's
That
you
is
can't
like,
the
ever
that's
cast it
the
again.
sad answer, but that is unfortunately something that the DM can just do is be like, it just doesn't work. If you're
yeah.
gonna be that ridiculous with it, it doesn't work.
Hmm.
So that being said, what I was about to say is I think that does mean eventually there would come a point at some point, but probably much later than in our timeline, where people start to realize, oh, science can do more than magic. And so we would eventually start to get like industrial revolution type stuff, but maybe like 200 years later. So like now in the
Hmm.
2000s instead of the 1800s was when it would be kicking off.
This is how we get steampunk.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Pertuset doesn't like the steampunk.
I
I'm
love
more of a fan of
steampunk.
Cybercog personally.
Huh?
Anyway,
Like,
um, one thing I
and
do think that would be an interesting way that they would tackle an arms race of sorts would be if this, you would want to accumulate and far outnumber how many magic things you have as opposed to your opponent. Because I feel
Mhm.
like most warfare prior to like the 20th century would be like you got maybe at most 20 wizards, and that's saying at most. More often than
Mhm.
not, you probably got like 10, 5, or 1.
Hmm.
Um,
The court wizard.
yeah. But in 20th century and all and beyond warfare, I feel like it would be like we have there's two ways. There's one which is put all the wizards in the spell or in the scroll making mines, have them all make scrolls of meteor swarm, and then we'll fly a helicopter or we'll fly a fighter pilot jet over wherever we're trying to get and release the scrolls from above them.
Or
Good
delayed blast
Lord.
fireball. Terran's delayed blast fireball thing could probably.
I've thought about that. The only problem with that is it still only has a radius of 20 feet.
Yeah.
It
Mm.
will hurt like crazy for whoever's there. You
That's
just better
it's a
hope you hit.
precision strike. It's a precision
Well,
Yeah,
it's a
strike.
precision try, but so if we're going with real world logic though, because that's the thing, a nuclear bomb, like the actual detonation radius, is not relatively small, but is targeted. But then you have all of the stuff that spreads from it. What would happen with the delayed blast fireball? Like the heat coming off of that would
this
level a city.
the game rules don't say any such thing happens, so it doesn't happen.
Yep.
Somehow magic contains it.
But I do just want to say, funnily enough, Pertuset has just reinvented like 20th century factories making bombs and
Yeah.
and just redone that, but with scrolls.
Get to writing, boys. There's another order up. This
Yeah,
one's from
so
our political opponents. We're double dipping.
Mm.
Oh,
That's how
no.
you get what was that one general that made a really big oopsie in the Middle East?
You're asking that question?
The one that got like called into the court because they were like, you sold weapons to our opponents.
Oh, I don't remember who you're
I
talking
can't
about, but
remember
I
his
know
name, but
they
I
yeah,
don't
exist.
know.
They're out there somewhere.
I could imagine that happening to a wizard. It's like, why did you do that? You are considered an enemy of the people now.
So
I
once
wanted a
again,
lot of money.
once again, you are just driving the "it's just our timeline, but with magic"
Yeah,
theory. Everything
Yeah.
occurs roughly exactly
Because
the
people
same.
are the
There's just
same.
magic now.
People don't
exactly.
change.
The more you change things, the more they stay the same. That's the
Yep.
lesson. We can circle back to other moments later, but I just really wanted to cover the 20th century because I think that's the most fascinating one to try and do. But also, I think the other really sad way to consider them trying to do it, other than scrolls, which this would probably happen simultaneously, actually. You got like one country making a bunch of scrolls, and then another country would be like, no, we need more wizards.
Hmm.
Time to implement eugenics.
Mm. Well, that's
See?
not really far off the mark from what was
That's
going
what
on in
I'm
the 20th
saying.
century.
That's what
People
I'm
are
saying.
horrible.
Mhm.
The supreme mage race. This.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh.
no. Wow.
Which is funny as well, because the only way that would happen would technically possibly be through sorcerers, because everybody else would be like, no, you need to go to wizard school to do
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
it's not just like something that you do. You have to study for it. No.
There probably
It's
certainly would be
you to go to
someone that's
school.
like, nah, sorcerers are better. We need to make more of them. Oh, there would,
Unintentionally neutering magic forever.
yes. There would also
Oh.
likely be a wizard supremacy thing going too, where it's like, no, no, no. Every single person needs to attend wizard school for at least 10 years.
Yeah, that's like a that's that thing people talk about that was a big ideology back in the 20th century, technocracy, where
Yeah.
it's all the people who are really smart and have degrees, they run everything. That's
Mhm.
that's what mageocracy is in this
Yeah.
scenario.
I could
Uh,
see it's to me that's like what is it like the forced conscription thing where it's like you have to serve a few years in your military.
Hmm.
you have
It's
to go to
like
Have to go to
wizard school
wizard
for
school.
you
2
have to go to
years at a
wizard school.
minimum to
Yeah.
get your associate's degree in
Hmm.
transmutation magic.
But I don't want to be a wizard. I want to be a fighter. Too
That's too
bad.
damn bad. You're gonna go to wizard school. You have to get if you want a good job this day and age, you have to get a 4-year wizarding degree, son.
Does
That's
this
just
mean
how
that
it
like fighters
works.
and monks are like trade school?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know nothing about them fancy
And
rules.
in our analogy where magic eventually gets overtaken, it still works where it's just like today where now like trade schools are back in and that's
Yeah,
like the thing
and
to
people with
do.
degrees are like, what do I do with this?
Yep.
Yeah. It's like I know how to cast minor illusion, but it doesn't really help me outside of jokes on TikTok.
Yeah.
I know how to use
Oh.
Photoshop, but it doesn't really help me outside of jokes on TikTok.
Yeah.
Your underwater mage hand basket weaving degree isn't going to help you in the real world,
I want an
mage.
underwater mage hand basket weaving degree. That's great.
But yeah. So that's
Well,
the future, or I guess the current era.
well, continuing on to get away from like, eugenics. My question that I was going to ask earlier, now that we're kind of on it is, what do you think if we had to like obviously it's not reality that everyone has to be a wizard, but in this situation because we all went to college, what do
Yeah.
you think you guys would have done if you like went to wizard school instead of college?
I went to wizard school instead of college. I'd probably
Yeah,
still
what
be
would
there.
I mean, yeah, I don't think any of us would have graduated yet.
I was gonna say, presumably, wizard college or wizard school is like you got to be there for a while to get
Mhm.
anything worthwhile in it. I imagine though you'd have to. It would be one of those things you have to go to the school while doing a job.
Mm.
But if that were the case, since wizard school would take a longer time to complete, there would probably be more like almost like residencies. There would be more jobs
Mhm.
you can do that are actually beneficial to society
Yeah.
while doing your schooling. So it's like you're in wizard school, but your job is to be like this town's, I don't know, wizard.
The
You
town
gotta
wizard.
do magical favors.
But that's what I'm asking is like, aside from like how long we would be there, because I agree, we probably all wouldn't even be graduated yet. But if like a major, quote unquote, is like a school of magic or a subclass or something like that, what do you
Mhm.
think would have been what you would have ended up doing in that scenario?
Enchantment.
Enchantment?
Probably
Elaborate.
a lore wizard. Either lore, I don't know if I would have been a wizard. I don't know. I may have gone the bard track because I'm still trying to figure out. I feel like anything that's still arts and performance arts would have. So maybe I minored in wizard, and I probably would have been at bard
Mm,
school.
I minored in wizard.
I minored in
yeah.
wizard, yeah.
Oh. Can you do
Basic
that? Can you
cantrips
like
and
can
shit.
you is
Yeah.
minoring in wizard and like can you swap in between the two? Or is it well, I guess multiclassing exists.
You can multi. Well, I feel like
I
okay. The way that I'm thinking it works is I'm assuming that film and art and stuff would still probably be in the bard sect because I mean there is a history of actual practical magic being the basis for a lot of modern filmmaking techniques and special effects and things like that were created by magicians. And so that's kind of the principle that I'm taking that off of. And I feel like if you went to like the wizard equivalent of a liberal arts university, probably a bard school, but then
yeah.
maybe like on the side some studying of like the breakdown of magical theory and how this works and the practical applications of it without necessarily learning the high level damagey stuff, but I like can break down and understand how and why mage hand works.
Mm. What's that thing that's called? Like pre-med, right?
Yeah,
I feel like that's what your minor would be in, pre-wiz.
maybe
Pre-med,
pre-magic.
pre-calc, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said enchantment, Pertuset. Why
Mhm.
enchantment?
Well,
I
it's
think
no secret on this channel that
yeah, I was
my
about to say, I think
real
I already
ma
know.
yeah,
It's a
my real
psychology
major was
degree.
psychology. Yeah, it would be psychology. My whole thing would be like, I love enchantment magic, but it's like incredibly illegal, except for, well, even in war crimes now, we're not allowed to do it, which is kind of rude. I thought it all fair in Love and
How
War,
dare.
but I would be like, I want to see if there's a way that we can ethically make use of these spells.
So you're fulfilling your real life desire to go back to the 1950s and do psychological experiments on people.
Again, the
I'm
more we
always doing
change, the
that.
more it stays the same. The more
I want to invent mass gesh and be able to use it on a populace so I can control them.
I just want to make
Oh.
magic moving pictures. Look, it lights up.
Oh, that's just politics. Wait a minute.
Oh my God, I could do magic propaganda. That would be insane.
That would be
I didn't
pretty
even think
cool.
about the implications of that. That's a whole
Mhm.
other thing.
Yeah.
Jordan is going to be employed by the United States government in this timeline. Yeah, I think divination would be the closest to
No,
what
you're a
I've
lore
got going on
bard.
now.
Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say I'm if I had the ability to be like I can actually just figure out what happened in the past, like with magical mind powers, I would go for that instead
Yeah.
of
So not
I want to read
chronergy then.
books. No. No, I would be too scared to we're working under the assumption that we're still relatively the same people as well, like we're not drastically changed.
Yeah.
Levi does not want to mess with time. Levi is like that's a terrible idea. I
Taryn
am
Cannon would
not
be a
doing that.
chronergy wizard.
No.
So no, I would not be a chronergy wizard. I would go for like divination wizard.
That's the
And
closest
also
thing you'll
because
get.
I did dabble a bit in political science as well in my undergrad. I have a minor in political science. So there's that too, is like Levi would work for the United States government.
Mhm.
And
How
I
do
would
we
be like a
describe the
person that's
timeline
like
where we all work for the United States government?
I was scrying on the president, the premier of Kazakhstan 3 days ago, Mr. President. I know what he
Mhm.
had for breakfast. Bring that up in the meeting and
Mhm.
he'll freak.
Yeah.
We just invented our own version of the West Wing, but it's us in a magical
Yeah.
timeline divergent of
Mhm.
this one.
Yeah. I don't work for the
Oh.
United States government officially, but I do.
We are written by Aaron Sorkin. That's the important part.
Yeah. Who? No. The other one that I think is interesting because like I said, we can talk about the real history that's like goes back further and further, but especially since we don't live it, I think it becomes either harder to fully grasp how different it would be, or it would be simple to explain. So I would rather dive into now we've done the 20th century, now let's get into the 21st century.
Yeah,
Facebook.
Mr. President, there's been a second dragon.
Yeah.
I just-
I'm thinking social media, smartphones, technological boom. And I've thought about it, and I think the way it would be, this is where, so like technology is at a weird point right now, because as you said, this is probably off the heels of the beginning of the magical industrial revolution from World War One and Two.
Mhm.
Debunk.
But then you get some weird college kids that have been going to wizard school for like a couple years, and they're like, dude, nobody's thought about doing this with scrying and sending. I'm gonna see what happens if I put them together in a box.
Yeah.
And now we have magic smartphones.
How are they
It's just a
different from
box with
regular
a bunch of
smartphones?
like
Are they just-
magic glitter in it.
It's
Yes,
just-
scrolls become buttons that you can push on this little tablet.
Oh my god.
So that way you can just cast sending to your friend over and over again.
Yep.
But then it'll run out of battery and you'll have to start charging it.
Mm.
What's the battery in this circumstance? Is it like
Some
I want to say
arcane
it's like
battery.
you
weave juice?
Yeah, it's weave juice.
That's right.
branded.
And then we start mining the weave out of the earth. That's natural
Mhm.
deposits of weave in the earth,
Mhm.
Yes. Well, I
And
feel
then we get
like
to the
which
crisis where we're
contributes to
depleting the
global
weave.
weaving.
yeah,
Yep.
Which
global weaving's crazy. I would say global weaving, but I think it would be just like in real life where there's like because things made during war times existed, people found out about them and was like, I want to use that. And so like a computer kind of thing, right?
hmm
hmm
They'd be like, that seems awesome. Let me put that into a tiny little handheld device. And so like batteries probably would have been made for something in warfare time, like magical batteries. They contain
Mhm.
magical energy, something to make it to where scrolls aren't one use, right? And then they'd be like, okay, now let's slap those, let's make them smaller, put more juice in them, put them in these little tiny tablets. That's where I'm extrapolating a bit because this isn't in 5e, but I feel like that's how if we had magic since the dawn of time, I feel like it's not so far to say that after thousands of years we would get to a point like that.
Yeah. I feel like somebody would figure out the application, especially if we are keeping the general events of history on the same track.
Yeah, there would be like different levels of discovery as we went
Mhm.
along.
My question is,
Yeah. The Enlightenment?
no.
Oh.
This is going back into the 20th century a little bit, but not too far into the 20th century. The space race.
Yeah.
Instead of making rockets, was it just different mages coming together in the US and the Soviet Union to be like, okay, how do we make Dimension Door go farther?
100%. I think instead of trying
Definitely not
the
rockets,
problem
yeah.
of trying to get the projection right and getting out of the atmosphere, it's what do we do once we get out there?
Yeah.
Like we've gotten up there, but his eyes melted and he's out of ears. So like, how do we prevent that?
I just like the idea of like the astronauts don't have to ride there for several hours. It's just once they finally figured out the math, some wizard was like, okay, I can just send you there immediately. You can just go to the moon now. I
Yeah.
can just open a door right here and you can walk out.
I think that yeah, they saved a lot of time figuring out the how, and then it was more a problem of like, all right, we got a dude up there. He didn't survive, but we got him up there. Now
can
the
go to the
next one
moon
needs
now.
to survive.
What do you need? What do you mean you need air on the moon? What do you
I
That's
think
how they find out there's not air
Yeah,
on the moon. They
that's-
tried it first and they were like, oh,
using
that's
sending.
not good.
Did you try the moon cheese?
This is-
It's rock. um, I think there's two ways it would have been done. I think definitely they wouldn't have done rockets. I think they would have done with magic,
Mhm.
but I don't think they would have been able to expand like Dimension Door, and I don't think they could have teleported. Well, I guess they could have tried, but I think they would have been too risky.
They
Now there
were able to
is
afterwards.
yes, afterwards like teleportation circle. That way it's like guaranteed. But There's also the spell that came from one of it was from the sci-fi book. I can't think of its name right now, but
Spelljammer?
yeah.
I wanted to call it Space Jammer for a second.
I was going to
Spelljammer.
say acquisitions
Space
incorporated, but I don't think
Jammer.
that's correct.
No, there's air bubble, which is essentially like an astronaut's helmet. So I would say like they would figure that. Well, first off, they would send somebody up there, and then they would probably like go take a look and be like, oh,
He
okay.
has no
Um,
eyes.
yeah, and then they come up with air bubble, and then they would go like, okay, listen, buddy, we're gonna give you this spell called air bubble. Here's 20 scrolls of dimension door, and here's the teleportation circle stuff. Start going, and it
Go
would just be,
nuts.
and they just keep going. And I like to think eventually they'd run out and be like,
Popping.
yeah, I can imagine they'd be like, oh, I'm not gonna have enough. I have to turn back, and they look back, and the Earth has just moved really far
Yeah.
away, and it's like,
Uh-oh.
oh
no!
gosh. And so like they're like, okay, so there's a guy up there. We've left him out there.
We don't
He's
know exactly
definitely
where he
dead.
is. We just know he's up there.
We have to wait 8 hours because all of his spell slots are gone, so we can't
Yeah.
communicate at the moment.
Oh, I think there'd be some mishaps like that. I also feel like there'd be one where it's like we got him up there, but we forgot the teleportation circle, or rather, we got him up there. He did the teleportation circle wrong.
It's-
We have to redo it.
And then he ran
turns-
out of components. We didn't give him enough components to do it more than once.
Yeah, he messed it
Didn't really
up.
think that through.
He tried to use it. We don't know where he went.
He's gone. He's
Yeah.
not on the moon anymore. He's not.
Oh, I think there'd be a lot of funny mishaps like that.
The Department of
But-
Water Breathing gets gutted and transitioned over to the Department of Space Travel.
Yes. The Department of Air Bubble.
That does beg the question in this timeline, would we be more capable with exploration and stuff? Because I feel like it does make it a lot easier just to travel in general. The expense of energy is far more of a relatively easy process considering humans recharge every long rest that they take.
True.
So,
But it
I
only
think
gets
we
you so
would,
far.
but we would have more of these like really stupid mishaps.
mm-hmm.
Mm. I'm
Because,
thinking.
yeah, no, I do agree because if you don't have as much risk of not being able to go back again, like if you mess up the moon landing, you're not going back for a while. In this one, it's like, nah, just send another guy up.
Mhm. They'll get it.
We'll get it eventually.
If you think of it like the colonial era, right? Until you got a teleportation circle, it would be really hard to get over there.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't know if they would even figure it out. I wonder if it would still just be like a non-magical explorer would be like, nah, I'm gonna go find it. Um, that would be really
Christopher
funny.
Columbus, hero of Muggle kind.
I just imagine it'd be really funny to be like someone gets over there and they were like, we're not gonna bring a wizard because like we're not gonna need one. Or all the wizards are like, no, I'm not gonna go with you to the end of the world. Why would I do that? And then and they get over there and like they brought like a sending stone or something and they're like, hey, there's like a place and people here. And it's like, okay, we're gonna have to send a wizard over there and get the teleportation circle.
Oh.
That would make it easier.
Yeah. I wasn't even also just thinking about like space. I was thinking about like the ocean because the ocean's not very because you saying air bubble made me think about like how much more could we have actually because we could have been doing under the water stuff like long before
Mhm.
we were able to in this timeline because of diving suits and stuff like that. So like did we have like medieval wizards going down there figuring out, oh, hey, there's a giant trench down here in the middle of the ocean that goes down miles. And there's weird stuff down here that eats chemicals.
To a
Like,
point, but I feel like also it's like there's the pressure aspect, right?
yeah, that too. Yeah.
Even water breathing and air bubble wouldn't help you with pressure.
True, true.
Maybe like stone skin might, but I also don't think that would either.
I don't know.
Yeah. If anything, I feel like they would because at first I feel like a lot of the spells, if we choose to go back and think of it historically, I think it would be like let's assume we don't start out of the gate at the dawn of time with all the spells in the book,
Hmm.
right? I think some of them would slowly start to prop up, just like how we said air bubble exists as of the space race.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like eventually a wizard will come up with water breathing for some like fun, silly reason. They're like, I want to swim with fishies. Or maybe a druid does that, I guess.
Yeah, and somebody's like, wait, the practical applications.
And I imagine there'd be like some medieval warfare tactic, like a legendary tactic where they cast water breathing on a bunch of their soldiers and had them emerge out of the water to flank the enemy.
I can see the Romans doing that, man. I guess
Yes, exactly. They're like, they'll never see it coming.
there would be a lot less shipwrecks in human history if this
I
was the
think,
case,
yeah.
because people could just go down and tear it apart and like
Yes, they could actually clean it up.
yeah, so we would
Mhm.
have severely less like pirate mythology in this timeline.
I think there'd just be a lot less ships and shipbuilding, sadly.
Yeah, that too. Yeah. Just walk. Just
No
Yeah.
Titanic submersible.
Mm-mm.
nope. No Titanic. No Titanic.
Mm-mm.
True.
Probably not. Yeah, I
No,
think
no, I think that people are still stupid enough the Titanic would still happen.
that'd be
No,
what
I
they
feel
would
like
do.
just human
they
nature
see
and
the iceberg
hubris.
coming, and the captain has the wizard cast water walk on everyone on the Titanic, and they all get off the side of the ship and push the iceberg away.
There we go. Okay, I'll give you Titanic with less casualties. I still think the Titanic happens because humans are stupid.
True. I feel like that's a can in a vent, right?
Yeah, it's that and
Uh,
like the Hindenburg. It's just the hubris of mankind.
mhm.
Still happens, significantly less tragic, but still happens.
I think there was like a wizard on board in case things go wrong, and the wizard got like drunk or something, went to the party, and like went like, "Don't worry, guys, I got this." I forgot how to do it. And then everybody just died anyway.
I raise you somehow significantly more tragic because magic is involved that I
True.
haven't thought of yet somehow.
Relying on wizards instead of any actual present day emergency.
Yeah, no,
things.
no safeguards,
No
nothing.
fire hydrants, no fire extinguishers.
Nope. We got a wizard who could do that.
No flood walls.
And it's the exact same situation as the Titanic, where it's like back then the whole having someone like on the radio all the time wasn't a thing
Mhm.
because
And
they
not
were
enough
like, why would we
lifeboats.
need someone on the radio the whole time? The wizard was like
fun.
asleep when they hit the
Yeah.
iceberg. And
Yeah.
so
They had like a sending wizard that was supposed to receive messages, and he was receiving messages, but he was just conked out.
yeah. Exactly. Oh. So once again, the more we change, the more it stays the same.
Exactly. I think that's the fun way to do it. It's relatively easy, like I said, to go back and be like, okay, caveman times, people have magic. How different does our history unfold? Completely new nations, completely new rulers and stuff like that. And like, sure, one, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of
It is a
work.
lot of work.
Two, you don't know. You're not there. But that's okay. I think it's more fun to do it like this because then we can also talk about the JFK assassination. No, I'm kidding.
His head really did just do that.
Dang. Did he
Think
just do
about
that?
okay, without like getting into the controversial side of it, think about how like more whack conspiracy theories would be.
Oh, there's so much
this
room
world,
for
because
it
it would be
now.
like he actually had a simulacrum clone that was on the
True.
grassy knoll.
That's like a known spell, yeah.
There's the theory that he oh god, what's the name of the guy? That shot
Harvey
JFK.
Lee Oswald?
Harvey Lee Oswald did do it. There were just actually like 3 of him.
Yeah, there's just
It was
multiple.
Harvey
Were
Lee and
simulacri, yeah.
Would it be Harvey's Lee Oswald or Harvey Lee Oswald's?
The Harvey's Lee.
I think it would be Harvey's Lee's Oswald's.
Okay, there we go.
It's like Mokokos.
the 3 Harvey Oswalds.
Yeah.
Or it's Harvey Lee and Oswald.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I think. I think it's Harvey Lee and Oswald. And that brings us to AI, which would be like simulacrums given some degree of intelligence through like creation bards or something. That would be crazy.
I hate it. I hate it.
That's what I started thinking.
How do
I hate it as
VTubers
much as
work in
normal
this
AI.
Scenario? Wait, okay. Crazy thought just popped into my head.
Yeah.
a massive social aspect of the 21st century would no longer be an issue because of the ability of spells like Alter Self and just the capability to completely change the human form at will. That would just
It'd
be
be very
gone.
easy. It would
That
be
would be
Like
very
out
that's
of
one
the
of the things that
equation.
would be regulated. I feel like that's one of the things that would have to be nailed down in the regulation of like, this is, you really can't do this.
yeah,
Maybe not legally.
only so many people would be able to cast it. It's relatively low level, but it's not super low level. I feel like it would be like going to a doctor almost. You go to a professional, pay him money,
Mhm.
and be like, make me look different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and it would just be a matter of like, I can do it, but I have to evaluate you first and make sure that this is a thing I should or can do to you ethically and
Mhm.
legally.
Yeah.
And then the wizard in this case would be like, let's see, are you a violent criminal who's currently on the run and your face would be recognized by a database? No. It would be stuff like that. But otherwise, I think people would just do it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I could see it too. Like if you have like coworkers and one day they come back looking like a completely different person, and it's like, oh, you altered. You went
Yeah,
altered.
yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's the
altered.
same thing as like going and getting your lips done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It looks good. I'm glad for you. I'm happy for you. It's like
But in this
so.
scenario, it's not like it doesn't have because again, if we're going on rules as written, it does not have the horrible consequences that stuff like plastic surgery can.
Yeah.
You're just altered, and that's like your
Mhm.
actual body. It's you're
Yeah.
fine. So yeah, we've gotten over that hurdle
hmm
in this timeline that we haven't even managed to get halfway over in ours.
I also I want to imagine. I don't think it would be very different, but I want to think about like celebrity. How
Mm-hmm.
that would be in the modern age. I think
Mhm.
that'd be very interesting, especially with things like scrying being present. Paparazzi, man,
Oh
like in the
God, paparazzi would
2000s.
be so
Oh
invasive.
my gosh, yeah.
There would be super heavy regulation of divination magic,
Yeah.
as well
hmm
as I think stuff like amulets of non-detection would be like huge.
Mhm.
That would
Yeah.
be something that like almost everyone would have one of those somewhere.
hmm I feel like there'd be a point of like if you scry too much, there's like it could be like a legal battle. It's like that's grounds for an argument of harassment or stalking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it could also be like, well, that was a public place, or like in some
Yeah.
countries, like the United States, where it's like much more free form. It's like, you shouldn't have been stalked, idiot. You shouldn't have been scryed on.
We just
It's up to
keep
you to buy
looping back around
non-detection.
to it's just the same.
Like,
It's
well, it's
Yeah,
like how some places around here have the open recording laws. Is like if
yeah.
exactly,
you're in a public place, you don't have a reasonable degree of privacy just
exactly.
because you are occupying a public space.
You're in a
hmm
public space. I can scry on you,
Yeah.
Stinky.
Or the argument even of like, if you really don't want to get scryed on, get some non-detection.
Yeah.
Um,
Everyone has it. You can go down to the
mhm.
corner store and buy one. You can.
I feel like it would be easy to be like, oh, in our era, celebrities would be like really awesome wizards that invent cool spells and do great things for humanity. No,
No.
no. We all know that's not true. We all
No.
know that's not true. Name a scientist. Right
Now
now.
name
Weirdly
three
enough,
Kardashians.
weirdly enough, in this scenario, Shaquille O'Neal probably would be a wizard though, because he does have a doctorate degree.
No way, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's me yelling.
Shaq would be a wizard.
Shaq's a wizard right now.
And that's the greatest thing we
Yes.
discovered today.
Oh my gosh. Now, conversely,
Oh.
there's a lot more to talk about there. I think this is a gold mine of
This
discussion.
This
I'll
is great. We
say.
got to
This
do
is
another
great.
one of these.
Yeah, this is the modern magic episode. But conversely, what if we had magic all of a sudden right now?
Right now, this very second, it hasn't been a thing until right this second.
It just kicked in. People all over the globe suddenly knew or felt that they had it. They could do it. Varying levels of magic dependent on people's like knowledge, training, etc.
I think things would be chaotic for like a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, depending. And then I think some of the bigger countries like the US and Russia and China would probably be able to clamp down on it eventually just because they have the bigger militaries that would be capable of reinstituting order. But even then still it would still be like kind of weird,
hmm
like they got to figure out what's going on. How do we deal with this now? I think other countries would just explode.
Oh yeah? You think we'd be able to handle it?
I think we would simply because of the military, and if the government needs be, they can be like, okay, we're gonna implement martial law.
Yeah.
Oh,
I feel
yeah?
like it would get ugly, but I think that we would probably, like, get to some kind of point. I don't know. Because, again, as we said this entire time, people are stupid.
But that's what I'm saying is other countries that do not have like big or strong militaries, I think they would collapse into anarchy. And so like no offense to any of our European watchers, but a good majority of Europe I think would fall apart. Same thing for most of Africa. Um I don't know about South America. I don't know.
I don't think much would change there.
Really. It's just-
I feel like we may lose a couple states. I think that might
Well,
be the.
I think there would be
Idaho has fallen!
I think
Has
there would be
fallen.
like pockets of places that were like anarchy within the US, but I think the greater, larger nation of the United States would manage to like hold on. It would just be unstable. Same for like the others
I think
named,
for
like
better or
Russia
for
and
worse,
China.
we would come out the other side. But I feel like it would not be without, like, California may finally end up underwater or something like that. Like, it's bad things would happen.
Wait, turn on the news, any channel, it doesn't matter. California mysteriously disappeared today.
I can see the outline
on
on
the
the
moon.
news
Yeah,
headline. It went to the moon. That's where the circle went.
That's where the circle
That's where the
went.
teleportation circle. The ring
In
of
other
fire
news-
is just a teleportation circle.
In other news, in place of California, one singular man has appeared in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
The missing cosmonaut.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh man. Yeah, no. That's what I think would go on like geopolitically. On the ground though, I don't know. Do I get magic? Is that a thing? Do I suddenly have magic? Or am I
I'll
a
show you
muggle?
some magic.
What?
Lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt. And then I got you with the lightning bolt.
I'm gonna like touch my outlet real quick to stimulate.
Please don't.
Yeah. If you do me a favor, grab the fork and
No.
Okay.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed the episode you just listened to. If you really like our content, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on YouTube, and look for us on Spotify. If you'd like to see us continuing to do more fun projects in the future, consider supporting us on Patreon. You can find our page linked in the description above all of our other social media links. And finally, if you'd like to keep up with the zany shenanigans of our lives and check out some more skit-based content and things like that, check us out on Twitter and TikTok, links in the description. And hey, thanks!